Good evening, everyone who's managed to join us for this special close-up talk, which will be a close-up, but at the same time, it's a wide-angled look at a photographer's artistic practice. And on this occasion, we are very pleased to welcome Colin Gray. Hi, Colin.
Welcome.
Right. So during the course of this talk, which is being live streamed on Facebook, feel free to send in questions via the Facebook page. Some will be selected for Colin to answer at the end. Time constraints may mean that we're not able to answer all of them, but I may take a liberty here in talking on Colin's behalf and say that he will endeavour to answer most of the questions post-haste after the talk has been completed and on the same Facebook page. So a bit of an introduction to Colin Gray. Did his MA at the Royal College of Art in 1984 and lived in London for 10 years. Then moved to Glasgow, and that's where he has lived and worked ever since. He's worked worldwide for advertising agencies, design consultancies and record companies, and I have to mention some of the notable covers for the great label 4AD. Through his design work, he's won various awards, including the Euro Art Directors Gold, 2 design silvers, and 9 appearances in their annual publication. Now, I'm sure there's been a few other wins during that time. We can maybe pick up on that later if relevant. You collaborate with filmmakers and other creatives in that practice. And you've recently been undertaking quite a bit of work for the charities sector, notably in healthcare settings. You've exhibited worldwide, including Kunsthal in Rotterdam, House of Photography in Prague, Australian Centre of Photography, Kaunas Photography Centre in Lithuania, to name just a few. You've appeared in numerous publications, including Charlotte Cotton's The Photograph as Contemporary Art. Colin has, of course, exhibited on 2 occasions solo monographic exhibitions at Street Level Photo Works, The Parents in 1997 and In Sickness and in Health in late 2009. You've appeared in numerous group shows in that period of time also. The selected work from The Parents and In Sickness and in Health was also shown at North Edinburgh Arts Centre under the appropriate title of Colin Gray, A Journey with His Parents Through Love, Life and Death. And that was shown as part of Luminate, Scotland's Creative Ageing Festival. An article published in Photo World magazine in Beijing a couple of years ago led you to exhibiting the Parents series during the Ningbo International Photo Week in China, which attracted over 25,000 visitors. Alistair Foster, who wrote that article for Photo World magazine and featured you recently on his Talking Pictures, interviews with photographers around the world series, he said that the work is not only highly regarded in the art world nationally and internationally, but has proved a useful therapeutic means by which others can reflect upon the challenges of intergenerational family life, ageing, the shift in dependence, illness, and the ultimate departure of loved ones. So the interlinked issue, the connecting strand in this short talk, which is really some brief sequences from your own life journey across 4 decades of your photographic practice, which has resulted in some work which is no less than psychologically penetrating, we could say. From the theatrical constructions of The Parents to the more heart-rending and intimate imagery of In Sickness and in Health, to works documenting your own children's transition into adulthood and also your own ageing experience. You've said that the photograph is often the byproduct of putting my family in challenging situations. It helps us start to talk about difficult things. Taking a picture helps me understand life. So we're going to kick off, Colin, by showing a video which has you talking about 3 or 4 of the key images within the parents. Now, we have shared this video on Facebook already, but it's only about 4 minutes long, so it's a good opportunity for people to see it again, because it also frames the discussion on what is to come.
My name's Colin Gray. I was born in Hull in 1956. The project on my parents started in 1980 when I moved away from Hull, my hometown. I moved to London and I got homesick, so I started to create pictures of my parents and the surrounds to sort of try and create a family album, which I didn't really have at the time, although I had earlier pictures from when I was a boy. I wanted to show something more happy, sort of brighten up my life in a dingy bedsit in London. So I started the project in 1980. Sort of one of the images which I think sums the playfulness of the project up quite well is Hull underwater, which is kind of like a dream I had, because Hull's actually below sea level, and when I was a boy, parts of the city used to flood. That was like a dream. It was like a dream I'd always had, that I'd wake up one morning and the living room would be underwater. So this is something I just sort of chatted to my mum and dad about what we were going to do. I kind of had in my head what the image would look like, but they added quite a lot of things to it as well. Things like the ducks was my mum's idea, and using the painting, the seascape on the wall, was my dad's idea. And I think it's not so much specifics like that, but just their general playfulness and sort of a good time we had together when we were creating these images, these earlier images. And it was just good fun to do. So it was like a collaboration. Although I was directing the lighting and the camera angles and everything, they became the actors on the stage. And Hull Underwater was probably quite a good example of that. Yeah, Heaven and Hull was made in 1990, and it was really like about, well, heaven and hell really, sort of thing, and trying to divide the picture up into 2. And initially I had like a wall and the 2 either side, so my mum was on one side with all the good things, and my dad was supposedly on the other side with the bad things, like with his beer and his fags and things. But it sort of seemed a bit sort of harsh, and then I sort of got them together, and we went to the fancy dress shop first of all. So it kind of like took a day or so to create a whole picture. We went to the fancy dress outfitters and got them trying on different things, which was quite kind of a good giggle, and put them in the mood. They didn't actually walk down the street with the outfits on though, which I'd like to have got them to have done. But so when we got home, the sort of initial idea was that, and I think they were a bit tired, so they laid down. My dad was a bit tired. He laid on the floor, and then I sort of like thought, well, this is quite interesting, and I got a sun lounger, which was around, and sort of played with the idea of my mum laid on top of him, but maybe she was a bit too heavy or something, so I've got the sun lounger on top of my dad, and created this situation. But it worked out really well, because to me it sums up their relationship. It's like my dad's like a benign devil. He's trying to nip out to the betting shop to put a bet on, or for a beer or something, or trying to nip outside for a fag. And my mum sort of keeps him in place. She's like the good fairy in the situation, keeping him in place. But you can see that she's telling him what to do and what's what. So she's in control. I think that's what this photograph seems to be about. Yeah, having started the project in 1980, it became quite multifaceted about different things. Some of the pictures were about dreams, some of them were about my mum and dad's relationship, and the sitters and second sitting are kind of about, well, one is with my child and one's my niece. So my mum and dad would be babysitting for us on several occasions, and the sitters is about my niece being looked after as a baby. My niece is now, I don't know, she's about 27 years old, so it's quite strange seeing her as a baby in this picture, with my mum on the phone getting instructions. And then my son, which I don't think he's not going to take too kindly, but showing him as a baby and with his bum to the camera. But it gets a good giggle. Everybody likes that picture.
So as well as these tableaux of work with your parents that were included in that exhibition, there was a whole series of scans and other objects within your parents' house. There was an additional work that you made at street level during your exhibition there. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yes, I'd love to tell you about that, Malcolm, because it was a bit of an ordeal, to be quite honest. I had the idea of producing a work on those windows at some stage. I just thought it was such an amazing space, and I think that the Parent series was on tour during the time, and then I knew the street level show was coming up in '97. So I went into the gallery and I measured the windows, and I couldn't believe that the windows were exactly the same dimensions of a sheet of X-ray film, and that it meant that we could get 5 by 5 sheets of X-ray on the window without any gaps. It was quite incredible that was a coincidence. So after that measurement took place, I thought, well, I've just got to do it. I've just got to go ahead and do this now. I've got to X-ray my parents' house in the gallery.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us about the process of how you did that? Yes,
well, I thought, well, we've got 5 windows, so we'll do 5 different rooms. So we started off, with a front door, and I couldn't literally use all my parents' objects, so I kind of got a front door that replicated the one they had, and the TV was pretty much as you see. The junk room was the bit of a mess, as all junk rooms are. So I kind of had to piece each bits and pieces together, and the last image was actually my old single bed in my bedroom. So what I had to do was take all the stuff into we did one image a weekend, because they were quite laborious to set up. So basically what you see is a construction of a room, yeah? So I had to literally take all this stuff into the hospital and construct it in an X-ray suite.
Not the kind of thing you'd probably get access to do these days.
No, absolutely not. There was no health and safety, I don't think, in those days. So we got away with quite a lot of stuff. We were doing it in the spare X-ray suite, because they always have 2 X-ray suites in most hospitals. But we were doing it in Paisley, and we usually start off on a Saturday morning, because we had to do it during the weekend when it was quiet. We start off on a Saturday morning, but sometimes we're running into the evening, and then like Paisley on the Saturday night can get a bit raucous, I understand. And there was quite a few occasions where we had to stop what we were doing, and there was one occasion where there was a fight in the X-ray suite. So some of the images, blood was spilt.
Yeah, okay. So round about the year 2000, you embarked upon In Sickness and in Health, which is the second chapter of this long-term project. Would you like to tell us about that?
Yes, in the year 2000, my mum had a stroke, and it was a real shock for us all. And I travelled down to the hospital to see her, because my parents live 300 miles away from where I stay. And I was really shocked, and really I used my camera as a kind of as a sort of therapy, really. I saw my mum there, and it kind of dissipated the shock of seeing her laid out on the hospital bed. That the first image you see is that, and that's the first kind of image in the series in a way. So I was so shocked to kind of use that to dissipate the shock, if you like. And then the other images in the series, my father felt the same way. He was very shocked, and we couldn't actually speak about what we were feeling. So I put him into difficult situations. So he was usually facing away from me in the mirror, or sometimes I put his head underwater, and it was kind of like a therapy for us both, really. It took him out of his kind of comfort zone. We had like as if we were both in a depressive comfort zone, and it kind of made us talk. So the photography was like a catalyst to create a conversation.
I seem to recall seeing some of the images from this series in Source magazine, Colin. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I had a meeting with John at street level in 2002, and I was about halfway through the project at that time, and they published some of the work, which was a real help to me because I wasn't sure how it was going, and it gave me confidence to carry the series on.
At the time of the Parents exhibition, you invited the writer, broadcaster and great champion of photography, Sue Stewart, to come up from Brighton to join you in an In Conversation event. Sue has written a fair bit of insightful narrative on your work, and I'd just like to quote her now by way of a tribute, in a sense, to Sue. She says, "Colin's photographs are warmed by love and connection. He presents the physical reality, but also finds the dignity and beauty in his mother's death. Then, with the record of her life complete, he continued photographing his father's experience of loss and solitude, now presenting him shrouded in a mistiness perfectly appropriate for the fog and haze of deep grief. Colin has documented photographically his parents for many years, through to challenging times when fun ebbed from their lives like a retreating sea. I can identify with something that Colin wrote in the introduction to In Sickness and in Health. Looking at myself in the mirror, I see a reflection in my father's face. I see the history in my own future. This is a curious and rather frightening experience."
I was also aware of, showing my mum in such a degraded state. I kind of wanted in that series to show some imagery of her when she was younger. So she didn't have many photographs of when she was younger, as a lot of old people don't, but there was a couple she had. So I was keen to get those in the series, and there's one where she's holding a picture in her hands. I think it was taken during the war. So I found that quite poignant to feature that.
An additional feature of the exhibition at the time, I recall, was your birth sheet, which was a double bed sheet that you framed,
Yes.
you mounted. So that was quite interesting, and you exhibited that alongside, I think, a photograph of your mother in her coffin, in actual fact. So in a sense, it was the beginning and the end of that journey. Very poignant work, I have to say.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this body of work, Don't Worry, It'll Soon Be Over, kind of overlapped with In Sickness and in Health. Could you tell us about this work?
Yes, it was quite funny because before my mum had the stroke, my parents were retired, so they didn't have anything to do really, but it's like they had this incredible timetable of events they did. They made cups of tea at the exact time every day, and it's not like they were looking at the clock, but I just thought this is really strange because you have more of a routine now than when they were working. So I was kind of keen to somehow document that process, and I had the idea of using a 35mm camera with a data back and trying to record the minutiae of their daily life. So the toilet paper was something I noticed that they had those two colors, peach and pink, and they seemed to alternate those colors. So I left the camera set up and told them to keep that basic routine going over the 36 days.
Okay. And if you exhibited that work, I hadn't seen it before until you started sharing it during the lockdown period.
No, I haven't shown it before, Malcolm. I think I had the odd talk now and again where I've shown it, but due to the sort of lockdown, I thought it was quite poignant to to dust its cobwebs off a bit, because it seemed to be what our daily life was becoming, a kind of domestic routine.
Mhm. So after the passing of your parents, you turned your lens to some extent on your own children, and that move from childhood and into adulthood. And that informs the body of work, Nina Goes Shopping.
Yeah, I got roped into going shopping with my daughter as my wife Eleanor refused to do so. So I took my camera in the hope of relieving the boredom. At the risk of being ejected from the shop, I shot blind from the hip, and there was a spirit level on the camera, so it was like a guide to the framing and, you know, to keep the camera in the right position. So my daughter acted like a decoy actress, really. And security guards are always on me not to take pictures, but it's like we're shoplifters, really. It's like a smash and grab exercise. So we kind of did these pictures on the cuff. A lot of them worked out and some didn't. Sometimes we went back and redid the scenarios too.
Yeah. So I suppose, like the parents, where your mum and dad were actually the collaborators in a way, that's the role that's now being fulfilled by Nina. How did she handle that process?
I think once she got into it, she was okay, because you know, she was a bit timid with it initially, and then we realized it was quite a good laugh doing the pictures. Do you know what I mean? We were sort of we were going close to the security guards at some stage just to have a bit of fun, because, you know, a lot of security guards got nothing else to do, so they're just looking for something to do, basically. But yeah, so she grew into it as the time went on.
Yeah, okay. And the work, which you've called Abandoned Spaces, features your son and your daughter. And in looking at these images, I'm just struck by how pertinent they seem to be in terms of reflecting our current lockdown situation. Tell us a little about these images that you're showing us now.
Yeah, the first image in this sequence is quite poignant, as my kids have a safe distance 2 meters apart. Abandoned spaces are like blank canvases to me in a way. The locations are of my own childhood, and it's like my children are on the verge of changing into young adults, and the wastelands reminding me of my childhood, playing in the bomb-flattened post-war flattened spaces of Hull. Sort of those spaces are like haunted by past lives as they lay empty, ready for change. And I kind of reenact my childhood with my own children playing in these spaces.
So the work that is titled You're Not Going Yet kind of speculates on your own near-death experience, and Caught Between is a continuation of that, although it's much more pertinent to the current existential situation that we're in regarding lockdown. Tell us a bit about these works.
You're Not Going Yet, having been in intensive care twice in the last few years and thankfully fully recovered. I mean, during that time I was in a state of limbo between life and death, caught between two worlds, and I had some heavy dreams and some perhaps paranormal experiences during that time, probably heightened by a vivid imagination. And in this work, I'm trying to recreate those visions, trying to sort of turn my inner world outwards.
Okay. I mean, I guess your work, Colin, you've always faced mortality straight on in that respect. Tell us about the Caught Between work that we can see here.
I started Caught Between a few days into lockdown. I was trying to sympathise with sufferers of COVID-19, as some of them might be in a similar state to mine. You're kind of in a state of limbo between life and death, caught between two worlds. It's an attempt to sort of reach out for shared experiences that might bring about a change in a perspective and another understanding of consciousness.
And you've been sharing a lot of these images through your own social media, which has been great to see. And I know but you've also posted several on our own street level friends and members lockdown group, which has proved quite inspirational for a lot of people. Some have been asking, how have you done these? How have you done these photographs in terms of the finish to them?
They're actually quite simple in a way. The Caught Between series. I'd kind of gone into the studio on the first few days of lockdown, and I was trying to do like a negative view of myself, so changing colors. So I had lots of lurid filters out, greens and pinks. And then I realized when I was making the images, they were quite striking, and they somehow reflected the vividness of the colors of what was happening outside in the outside world. So in a way, they're often lit with one light, just a simple light, and then basically the filters, they're just like plastic gelatin filters that are cut in different sizes, and I'm just wafting them around in front of my face, really.
These are digital images, Colin.
They're cut in different sizes,
and
I'm just wafting them around in front of my face.
You
really.
normally work in film. How did you find that transition from the digital, from film to the digital? These are digital images, Colin. You okay, Colin? Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, I had the question. Yeah, I mean, it's horses for courses in a way, but I really had to do this digitally because I was shooting so much imagery. You know, there's probably a pass rate of 1 every 500 or so. So the process is so hit and miss that I have to shoot a lot. So really, I couldn't do it on film simply because of the amount of images I had to shoot for the Caught in Image series to produce one image.
Mm-hmm. Does it work for you, sharing your images via social media before people have seen them in the flesh?
I suppose I've got used to it. I mean, recently somebody had written a Facebook page like I'd disappeared, and I thought that was a bit of a shock, actually. I thought they'd written it like I was dead, and I thought I'm still here. So I've had a bit of a spate of engaging with social media over the last month or so, especially during lockdown. So yeah, I have to embrace it really and move on.
Yeah, sure. And these images that you've just shown us there, well, we're seeing them on screen, but how do you envisage seeing them as tangible objects? Are they big? Are they small?
It's difficult to say until you start printing something, because I think every image has its own size, if you like. It belongs in its own world. So until I actually do a print, I won't really know how that might be. But yeah, I'd love to see them in the flesh, so to speak.
But you are preparing an exhibition, which we could say is the third chapter of this trilogy, and we have been speaking about that exhibition and when it is happening at street level, which it will, perhaps shoved back a little bit due to the current circumstance. So it's very good to see some of these images now in terms of anticipation of that. But just to go back a little bit, you mentioned when we're talking about parents, you mentioned that exhibition was touring, and it was touring by Photoface at the time in the latter 90s, which was Scotland's International Photography Festival. Where did it go to?
Oh, quite a few places.
Which ones do you remember?
Australian Centre for Photography. It went to the Kunsthal in Rotterdam, and the House of Photography in Prague. Farron's Art Gallery, obviously in Hull, which is always good to get it in my hometown. Yeah, and yeah, it toured a lot of places.
Yeah, we've still got most of it in our basement as well,
yes.
Colin, you know. However, it will see the light of day again. But you know, it's Mental Health Awareness Week this
Yeah.
week, which is kind of interesting in terms of what people might be going through at this particular time, if not at any other time. What kind of things, help you to keep calm when things are getting critical?
I think being in nature as I get older, I kind of like to be in nature quite a lot. And we've been doing that. Me and Yelena, my wife, we've been going in the park quite a lot, walking amongst the trees and the grass. So that's very therapeutic. I think it gives you a normalization to life. And I think we're a bit detached from nature in a way. Do you know what I mean? We've become detached. I think for thousands of years, we lived on the land, or we lived near the land. And it's only sort of the last 100 years or so we've become detached.
Mm-hmm. And does sharing images on social media, like you have been doing fairly recently, do you find that enabling? And do you draw some kind of inspiration from what other people are maybe sharing?
Yeah, it's always good to put your work out there and get feedback, because you never know. And I think it is good having social media, that the fact that you can be in touch with people all over the world. So you're not like just locked down to your own small village or town, really. So I do find that enabling in a way. Yeah. So I am sort of slowly embracing it.
Yeah, and it's very good, I think, that people are talking more intimately about their feelings in a way that they may not have done before.
Yeah.
So I hope that is something that that certainly continues. I think we're going to see if we have any questions. Okay. So there is one in from someone that we know well, from Jeremy Sutton Hibbert, who causing problems as usual, who asks in the best possible way, in the parents' lighting, the lighting in the parents is quite direct. Dare I say it, harsh. Is there a particular reason for
that? I just like that theatricality, and I suppose when I started the project in 1980, using colour film, it wasn't actually that good colour film. So it's not like now you get a sort of nice overall tone. So in a way, you really had to light it. And I used to do that a lot commercially also. Hardly ever did a shoot commercially where I didn't light something. And that was the case with the film. And I think it really started off in that way, because you needed to light the film on a practical level to umph it up a bit, for use of a technical term. And I just felt those situations that I created in my parents' house helped, because it gave it a more theatrical feel, and that's what I was looking for.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any other questions? Charlie Hackett, a good friend of yours, an artist, says that these recent photos are some of your most exciting. I love the feeling of immediacy in them, which is good. Paul Curry here asks, we've all functioned in a virtual world in recent weeks. Do photographs need to be printed and displayed in a gallery? Can't they reach a larger audience if they existed in a virtual world only? Now that's a bit of a provocation.
I think it's good to have them in both aspects. I mean, we're lucky these days. I remember looking at art work in the past in the 60s, and you were looking at some grubby encyclopedia, and people would say, oh, it's not, they always look better in the flesh, the artworks, which was probably true, but it is often an enhancement to see works on a screen. It's not always a negativity. But I also think it's good to have the work produced physically too, so it has a dual life.
Yeah. Okay. And Nina, your daughter, asked, Dad, how about me taking pictures of you whilst you bargain hunt in local supermarkets?
Oh no. she's got me on that one. Yeah, that would be like shopping in the Wild West, in the West End, when we're all sort of scrabbling for bargains in these supermarkets. So I think that would be a really, really, really good project, Nina. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Catch you going into the litter bins for
yes,
for the freebies. Yeah. I just mentioned Kath Polly made a comment earlier on about how she was influenced by your work. Kath graduated from Glasgow School of Art. She was a winner in the Jill Todd Prize a couple of years ago, I think it was. But just saying how much your work inspired her, and it's always stuck with her. So I'm just mentioning that. Yelena, who you may well know, asks, Colin, has the life-changing experiences you've had in the hospital changed your understanding of consciousness?
I think it would be hard not to go through those kind of life-changing experiences and not have a change. I mean, I'm sort of totally aware more of my mortality now. I mean, I'm getting older anyway, but I'm very aware of that. And I think, having a kind of flip like that in a hospital makes you sometimes feel that there might be something bigger than yourself out there, that we're connected with. We're connected to something bigger than just ourselves.
Yeah, it was interesting what you were talking about you having those kind of almost out-of-body experiences that you referred to.
Yes.
That's worthy of a different discussion. A couple of things coming in here, and I'll combine the both of them. Don Martin is asking, how do you feel looking back on the parents and in sickness and health? And Dan Hamilton is asking, after doing these, do you have a different look on life since?
I think with the parent series, I was often worried that the in sickness and in health period would kind of dictate my view on my life with my parents, because it was really only a 4-year period. So there was that worry. But now there's a bit of a distance between when I made those images and now, that I can kind of be a bit more reflective and see the whole picture with the parents and the in sickness and in the health. So yeah, initially was that danger of that worry that it was overtaking my vision of my mum and dad a bit too much.
Yeah. John Duncan, co-editor of Source magazine, is asking, are there books that you've been reading whilst making this new work, or things that you've been listening to, and if so, what are they?
I can't quite remember specifically, but I mean, I'm an avid Radio 4 and a Radio 3 listener, really. So there has been good programs on Radio 3. I really can't remember exactly the quotes. There was one on, I think it was called Alternative Spaces, which was a really good listen, and about a guy talking about some sort of experience that people can go through when they've had these, I think he called them flips, and meaning a near death experience, and how that can affect your view on life and death.
Okay. John's also asking, so it's a bit of a rewind question, what life was like at the Royal College of Art in '84. We may have Andy Wiener sitting in on this as well.
Yeah. It was fantastic. Yeah, we had lots of space. We were in an old building in Cromwell Road, so we had like these massive studios. We had a fantastic film grant. I think we got 150 quid a term, which is, I don't know, comparable to like 400 quid these days. And so yeah, it was a great place to be, and there was only, I think, 10 students on the course.
Yeah. Okay. Jeremy again asks what photographers you look to for inspiration. That inevitable question, I think. And do you know Philip Toledano's work, Days
Yes.
with My Father?
Yes. I'm obviously aware of his work, yes.
Yeah.
Photographers I look at these, I don't know. I look at I mean, I still like Buster Keaton and Laurel and Hardy. Really, they're kind of my go-to inspirations. I can't say they directly inspire the way I make work, but they are inspirations of things I like to watch. Photographers, I mean, Dupasky, Badon, and I'm trying to Diane Arbus. Yeah, lots of photographers in a way. Yeah.
Do you know someone called Mike from Nottingham?
Maybe.
Yeah, he's asking a football question, but
okay.
Not relevant. Liverpool?
Maybe. 2 games to go.
Not relevant. Okay. Robin Galanders says he loved In Sickness and in Health. Brilliant, sophisticated image making, straight photography. Do you think you've moved away from that? And also, how do you look so young? Which is exactly what I've been thinking.
Healthy living, I suppose. I don't know how I look so young. Just good genes, I think, my parents' genes.
Yeah. And Mari in Helsinki is asking, do you have plans to make documentation or about yourself getting older? I'd say in a sense that is what you're doing, but you're not picturing yourself within it. Although in the caught between.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I just don't feel that photogenic. Do you know what I mean? So in a way, I often create imagery where I'm hiding. I'm sort of trying to hide behind stuff. And if I was maybe more confident or in my appearance, that I might actually be more, full on like I am appearing here to you. So yeah, I don't always have that confidence, I think. So yeah, a lot often the imagery is misted with something.
Yeah, okay. What else have we got here? Stephen Healy, your recent work is semi-abstract, almost painterly. Are you moving away from people photography, and are you worried about leaving that legacy to move into more art-related work?
I mean, I was thinking that the other day because it was almost like, well, could I have made that last series Caught Between without me being in the pictures? And I have done some while I've been doing the Caught Between series, just abstract imagery, but actually practically it's easier to make the imagery with me holding the gels in front of me. Do you know what I mean? So on a practical level, I will probably continue like the self-portraits, but yeah, there's no reason why it can't get more abstract, really. And some of the imagery I produced, you can hardly make out in that series. So yeah.
You've also been sharing a lot of images from film faults. You've kicked off a whole series of people sharing images of the film faults, and this is on the Street Level Friends and Members lockdown group. So thank you for catalysing that. So has this period as well given you time to, how did you manage to keep all your film faults is one question I would like to ask.
Well, a lot of them are contrived film faults, Malcolm. So they are manipulated film faults a lot of the time. So obviously there's a hit and miss process that goes on. But in some aspects, you can control those mistakes. So it's about making mistakes happen, but not like it in a creative way. So a lot of the time that they end up in the bin, a lot of the faults, but some of them just turn out right. It's a hit and miss process.
Yeah, okay. And I mentioned Andy Wiener a short while ago, and he's just messaged there saying, doesn't have a question, but he just loves the new Caught Between work.
Right.
It's good you've been able to be creative during anxious times. Caitlin Black asks, when will we see Elena in your pictures with you?
Oh, well, hopefully in Street Level at some stage.
That's an interesting one because
watch this space.
Yeah, the current exhibition, Oscar Marzaroli, there's very few pictures of Oscar actually existing. So yes, as you say, watch this space. which we will do. If there's no more questions, I think we're going to probably bring this to a close very shortly. Okay, yeah, well, Roberto Cavieres is asking, has the present situation in lockdown inspired you to embrace new projects once this is all done? That's a good question.
I think that, Roberto, I would probably carry on the Caught Between series and see how far that goes. I like to exhaust all the projects until I'm really happy that I've done what I can with them. So I would think that's what will happen. And like I said with the question that Stephen asked, that I might make it more abstract.
Yeah. And another question, which is not something you could answer in one line, really, is from Arpita Shah. And she's asking, what advice do you have for photographers wanting to document their family in a long-term and meaningful way?
Well, you can never think of doing it in a long term. Do you know what I mean? Whenever I started any of this stuff with my parents, I never actually, I mean, a lot of the time I didn't think of it as a project. You know what I mean? It was only after like 3 or 4 years you're into something, you think, oh, actually, I've got a project going on here. So I don't think you can always think of it long term. I think you've just got to do it. I think you've got to do it and not be tentative. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's amazing, you know, people say, oh, my parents wouldn't let me do this, but I think, you know, you haven't. If you try, you won't know. Do you know what I mean? Until you've tried it.
Yeah, yeah. The other half of that was incomplete. What I asked you there from her, Peter, but she just added to document their family in a long-term and meaningful way. It must be a challenging balancing act of familial relationships and the relationship of photographer to sitter. I guess you kind of answered that anyway. That's just a continuation of our question. Paul Curry again is asking, visual influences are obviously important, but what about music?
Music. I mean, the last Caught Between series was always made to music because I kind of, you know, I was kind of dancing around a bit in the studio. So the music sort of the momentum of the music helped me do those pictures. So while I'm making them, I'm kind of dancing in front of the camera. Yeah.
No, that is interesting. One of the film faults that you did share from one of the albums, and I just have to mention it again, on the 4AD level. It's not really a question from me either, but it was a cover that you collaborated upon for This Mortal Coil, in the album called It'll End in Tears. Again, it just seemed so fitting within the context in which you were sharing that, you know?
Yeah, because I just thought, well, think of all the things I've worked on, you know, in my lifetime that have, you know, been mistakes, but ended up as being happy mistakes.
Yeah.
And I can't take a lot of credit for that particular album sleeve, but I probably had a part in its downfall.
Yeah. So, okay, well, I think we are going to bring this to a close very, very shortly. Indra has asked, is the book In Sickness and in Health still available? And I can answer that and say no.
Yes.
There may be 2 copies available on Amazon at £75. Great book, but keep your eye out for that, should it come up on any sites. The other book, which is, you know, you just have to have it, is the one from the parents. Got an essay in it by Ewan MacArthur, lots of lavish colour plates within it, and Street Level has a few copies left, the last remaining copies. So
I do have some also. So
do get your order in.
Yeah, if anybody wants
very soon.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to stop there,
Right.
if that is okay. But is there any projects that you want to pick up on once the lockdown is lifted that you maybe started before?
Oh yeah, there's a film project actually that me and my brilliant collaborator friend Philip Clemmer was supposed to be going to Hiroshima to film the A-bomb trees, the trees that have been, well, the trees that survived the A-bomb. It's the 75th anniversary. So hopefully when the lockdown finishes, we'll go to Hiroshima.
Right, okay. And tell us a bit more about that project, could you?
Yeah, it's with a charity called Shout at Cancer. So we're working in collaboration with them, and we will film the trees over a couple of week period, and then the piece will be, will be an art project in itself or a film, and but we'll use the trees also as a sort of vocal accompaniment with the choir when they sing. It's people have had their voice boxes removed, so they formed a choir as a rehabilitation. So we're hoping to sort of do projects with a choir, concerts.
Right, okay. Very good. Well, Colin, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, everybody.
It must be a strange experience.
Yes.
Pressing
strange experience.
40 years of your life into this short live stream, but
yes,
but we are making history in the fact of doing it. So this will remain on Facebook and on our YouTube hereafter. So thanks everyone for joining, and look out for our future talks. And thank you again, Colin.
Cheers, Malcolm. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.